different ones. So I'm doing this one. While we're connecting on Facebook and waiting for some other people to join, we definitely have much more registrations, I think, from different channels up to 30. But of course, you know, Friday is Friday, so everybody is a bit tired. So let's hope with a recording. Also, I will try to connect Clubhouse so that people can also hear us from there. We're trying to get modern. Meanwhile, let me start with one of my favorite videos, actually, about fashion, about sustainable fashion, about us people, consumers of fashion. I know you know it, but you know, I love the energy and the message here. So I will try just to make sure you have the sound. Let me double check once again if I get the tick right. Nope, I didn't have that. The sound is important, so that's what.
Wear brown shoes after 6. Wear a hat indoors. Wear a short skirt after 40. Wear a short skirt if you're a man. Try too hard. Don't try at all. Dress like a girl. Dress like a man. Dress like a teen. Stand out. Blend in. Mix prints. Mix pink and red. Show your panty line. Go commando. Cover up. Show it all. Be trashy. Be neat. Wear pink. Wear blue. Wear yellow if you're blonde. Wear red if you're a redhead. Wear socks and sandals. Look fake. Look chic. Look shake. Be a princess. Be boring. Take a stand. Be uniform. Be liberated. Be old. Be new. There are no rules in fashion, but one. Recycle your clothes.
So, no rules in fashion. Karl, are you wearing sandals and socks? Tell us, as an agile person.
No, I have no socks or shoes on. I'm at home. Liberated.
Amazing. So most of us speakers here, most of us, we are slow fashion, sustainable fashion people. That is why I decided to share this with you. Let me share now the Karl slides. Because Karl has actually prepared something I wanted and had to show you. So this event is part of the Global Agile 20 Reflect Festival. There are actually now already almost 800 free events on different topics, not only fashion and not really Agile, but you can also find some events on gratitude, emotional intelligence, personal development, creativity, and so on. You can get the access to the calendar on agile20reflect.org website. Also now, just to spread the word, you can use the myagile20reflect hashtag, making a photo of yourself, of us talking here. So more people describe the world of Agile and the world of fashion as well. We are volunteers here. The festival is huge, but it's the nation-based, so people are still donating, and that helps us to spread the word. You can also get into code of conduct on our webpage. I need to say that this session is being recorded, so we respect your privacy. If you don't want to use your name, your video, not using your audio, just using the chat for the sake of your privacy, we truly respect that. The festival is open. It will happen until the end of February, but this story will not finish. We will have some fantastic events as a follow-up, and most probably next year we will have another festival with Agile 21. Just for you to know that Agile, for people who never heard the word, Agile is actually coming from a very non-fashion industry, which is IT, technology, something super complicated for me. But you know, this thing worked 20 years ago. They wrote a manifesto, the rules of how you should work in order to be 100% Agile. And you know, it works also in other industries. The most successful corporations, startups, they implement agile philosophy and mindset, but also we can use it in our daily life. We can use it everywhere. We can use it for managing our families. And as I always say, the biggest project in our life is actually our life, and every day is a new project. And especially if you're involved in creative industry, in fashion business, of course, your life is not easy. And we creative people, we need some extra methods, tools, life hacks, to keep going, especially knowing the COVID environment where we are here. We all believe here, I guess, that art, fashion, beauty, creativity will save the world, but we need some tools and some help, some tips to get over this period. So this event is dedicated to fashion. However, we want to make it interdiscipline, cross-discipline. So even if you're not involved in fashion, you're just consuming fashion, it may be you can use something or what we discuss in your own business or in your own life. We have a variety of speakers here. So Karl is our agile expert. I will talk about Karl a little bit more. And then we have beautiful girls here. We have Dr. Yvonne, who also is not just a fashion person, but a person from science. And we have here Teresa, who is really a sustainable fashion person. Carrie Wild is not today, unfortunately, with us due to some personal reasons, but hopefully she will join us in the recording. And what else? No, these are the slides for Karl. We want the session to be as open as possible. Use your chat, ask questions using microphones. So it's more a round table. We want to share what works for us in fashion. We want to share what doesn't work. We want to ask Karl, as an expert, what we can do to be more agile and actually to help our businesses. So I promised you I will tell you a little bit more about Karl. But I have something here because the biography of Karl is so huge, it's difficult to remember. So Karl is a leader and a consultant in business transformation. So we're going to transform here a little bit in Lean-Agile leadership, in human-centered design. My goodness, I couldn't remember that by heart. Karl is a global influencer and also a futurist. So we can talk a little bit about the future of fashion and all us fashion addicts with very big experience working in multiple industries. And recently, Karl was nominated as top 10 the most influencing people, a thought leader and influencer by Thinkers 360. So we really have a huge expert, and I really love the approach Karl is working. Karl is also heart of Agile 20 Reflect Festival, CTO and a trustee of the fest. So I see Karl in action. It's a really big honor to work with Karl. And of course, our fashion representatives and their experience is something I'm really excited about. So Karl, can you maybe give some guidelines on how do we present our cases, or maybe you have specific questions to us which you're interested for us to answer?
So thank you, Yulia. I heard that introduction. I thought, I wonder if I know that man. It's very hard to hear what you've been up to. I just keep on working because I'm interested in what I do. It's a passion. I think for the current problems to be, and maybe if I take it as an agile coach, as though I was talking to them in a one-to-one, if they don't mind that, about where we might look to solve their problems and how agile might be able to assist them. I think that might be a good way to go.
Mm-hmm. So your role here is our personal agile coach. So we have a coaching fashion session here. I think this works very well. Let's start with our first speaker, with Yvonne. Yvonne, I need to give you the rights to share the screen. If you have anything to share with us.
Yes, I do. Hopefully it'll work.
So
You know,
you're now a co-organizer while you're preparing the slides. So Dr. Yvonne Ivanescu is the founder of an ethical swimwear brand called Now in Rio. She is a professional expert in brand strategy, and she's also a copywriting consultant and speaker with over 15 years of experience, and not only in fashion. Yvonne, the stage is yours.
hello, everyone. I'm so excited to talk to you about not only my personal experience launching a fashion brand, but also my experience with branding and building a brand. A little bit of a preface, branding is kind of a little bit of a passion project of mine. I started a podcast about this, and I've been interviewing many different branding strategists to not only learn how to build a brand effectively, but also to try and teach other people how they could build their brand. Because one of the things that I found that was super important as a marketing expert, and a lot of things that people don't tell you, is that branding and marketing are completely different things. And if you're an expert in marketing, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know what branding is. And that was my problem actually when I started launching my business. I was a marketing expert. I was launching a swimwear brand, and I was like, well, how do I do this branding thing? Like, what is branding? How do you start building a brand? And when I started reading about it, I learned how important branding really is. And it's something that a lot of people, when you start a business, you often skip over it because you think, well, I just need a logo, I just need colors, I just need a visual identity, and then that's it. I'm done, and then I can launch my fashion business, and I'm great. And what ends up happening a lot of the time is that you don't have sales, your marketing doesn't go anywhere. And when you think that you have a marketing problem, you actually end up having a branding problem. So let's talk about building a fashion brand. I'm going to try to keep it short. I can't touch on everything because branding is it's very complex. I'm not going to say it's complex, but there's a lot of pieces to it. So I'm going to be talking about a couple of pieces. Okay. So when you talk about branding, there's two aspects of branding, and there's the brand strategy aspect, and then there's the brand expression aspect. A lot of time, when you think about logos and you think about colors, that's actually the last thing that you should be doing throughout the whole branding process. So when you're doing the branding process, you have to figure out your internal brand, which includes your purpose, your vision, your missions, and your values. You need to understand your positioning, which is your audience, your competitors, and your differentiators. And then the expression part is your character, which includes your personality and brand voice, your verbal expression, which is the name, tagline, promise, core message, and then visual expression, which is your logo and your colors. Because we can't go through everything, what I really wanted to focus on today is the brand strategy aspect of it, because it's one of the most important things that you're going to have to figure out, especially as a fashion brand. It's incredibly important. So let's go with the first thing that I always tell people. Start with your why. Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So why did you start a fashion business? Like, why did you start your business? A lot of the time you have to be very passionate with what you're doing, and you need to connect that passion, and you need to understand why you're doing what you're doing. A lot of the time, the story that you will put into your brand is your personal story. So what is your story? You have to understand what your story is, because that story will drive a lot of your marketing. It will come up on your website. It will actually help people, your customers, connect with your brand, because people don't connect with brands, they connect with people. And having that personal connection with you and your story is super important. But the first question is, what is your story? Why did you start something like this? And what was really interesting for me is when I first started this whole process, I did a 7-week course, and I did this whole mindset, understanding who I was, understanding my values, understanding what I wanted out of my life. And in the course, the individual that was teaching it, Julia Stark, she actually asked us a couple of questions that I thought were absolutely amazing for you to understand why you do what you do. So some of the questions are like, what would you do if you knew for sure that you wouldn't fail? If money didn't exist, but you still needed to go to work every day, what job would you do for free? If you won $20 million, what would you do in the next 6 months, in the next 5 years, and the next 20 years? And what do you want your legacy to be? So these are just a couple of questions that you can ask yourself to understand what is it and why are you doing what you're doing? Because if you don't have that passion, if you don't have that connection, when the hard times come, which, especially in fashion, it takes a lot to do, like to create pieces, there's a lot going on. If you don't have that connection, if you don't have that passion, if you don't have things like that, people will see it. People will not be able to identify with you. You will not be authentic, and you probably will just kind of run away when the going gets tough. So it's really important to really start with your why. And another thing that was really great that Yulia told me to do, and I did myself in my journal, is if you could relive one day over and over again, how would that day look? Like without feeling bored, without having it tedious, how would that look? Take some time, write it all down, and see how you experience that. Now, once you figure out your why, what's really important, and I know that I had in the first slide, I had everything kind of mapped out. I do it a little bit differently. So you figure out your why, and then what I like to do and what I did is I started with research. You need to understand, does your market want this? As a fashion brand, yeah, it's great that you have a great idea. It's great that you love your idea, but do people want it? In my podcast, one thing that was super interesting that comes out of my podcast is a lot of people say, like, you are not the hero of the story. Your customer is the hero. You are the guide. You guide the hero. So who is your hero? What are their needs? What do they want? Is there a need for something like what you want to create? And so then from there on, you also have to understand, we're going to talk about this in the next slide, but you need to understand your customers. And I think that's what gets skipped a lot of the time, because a lot of people say, well, my customers are everyone. No, your customers cannot be everyone. You need to understand who your customers are and really get into the nitty-gritty of not only their demographics, their psychographics, but understand their pain points and how your product, your fashion brand, can help them solve their problem. So that's why in the end, it goes so much further than just a product. It's an experience, it's a feeling. Like, what do you provide other than a fashion piece, right? And then at the end of all of this, once you do all this research, you look at competitors, you look at what's already out there, you find the gap, your differentiator, which is super important. If you are putting something out there that already exists, what ends up happening is that you are going to be competing on price, and no one wants to compete on price because the lower price always wins. You cannot do it in that way. You need to understand what your differentiator is and lead with that. So in the end, if the market doesn't want it, then you have to pivot or rethink your idea. So research. Now, this is a great thing. Everyone will like my product. This is rarely true. So you have to really, that's the thing, when you talk research and I talk about customers, like, they are the heroes. Who are they? And a lot of the times, I know you don't want to do this, but you need to reach out to your customers. You need to have conversations with them. You need to sit down with them, and you need to ask them questions that are much deeper than, do you like swimwear? This is in my case. Do you like swimwear? Or, what you have to understand what their relationships are with swimwear. How do they feel when they go to the beach? What are their problems when you have to go very deep into it and ask those kinds of questions and listen to them. A lot of the times when you have these interviews with people, some of your ideas will actually come, like your ideas, your taglines, your slogans, they can actually come from your customers, because they'll say something so genius that you're like, you know what, I'm going to use that for my website. And so what you really need to do when you do a customer persona is you need to understand their demographics, which are age, their marriage, everything like that. You need psychographics. So what kind of music do they listen to? What kind of car do they drive? What kind of products do they use? These kinds of things. And then you have to understand what is their pain point, like I said, and how your product will serve their pain point. So you need to find, and this is going to be one of the most important things, because your customers drive every single thing that you will be doing from now until you market. Like, your customers will define where on social media you will talk. They will define what kind of blog articles you will write. They will define your visual identity. They will define your tone and voice. They will define every single aspect of everything that you do in your brand. So you need to nail it and you need to understand kind of what you're doing. Now, if you are a business like myself that has not launched, I haven't launched yet, I've made a guesstimation of my customer persona. That's fine as well. You can guesstimate, you can talk to people, you can understand what it is, and then you can validate it at a later time. If you've already launched, perfect. You can send emails out to people. You can look at Google Analytics, social media analytics. There's so many things that you can do to understand who your customers are. Now, I love examples. So I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to give you an example, a rough example of my customer persona that I've created for my brand Now in Rio Swim. So this is kind of an idea of what I created. It's still a work in process. I still need to validate it. It's a very rough idea, but as you can see, I have some pictures of who I think the woman, because it's a woman, it's swimwear for women. So my customer persona is a woman, her name, her location, her job, her household, children, her touch points. So where can I reach her? Where is she hanging out? She's hanging out on Instagram. And then I talk about her, like, who is she? So she loves water. She loves being outside in nature. When she travels, she isn't the type of woman who sits by the pool all day. Instead, she's constantly on the move. You want to kind of paint the story of who, for this example, who is Rebecca? What does she enjoy doing? And kind of visualize that individual. Now, if that's really hard for you, what you can do is you can maybe use a celebrity or an influencer. And another thing that I actually did, which I'll show you on my next slide, is I actually created a persona image board. So what does the Now in Rio Swim customer look like? Well, this is how she looks like. So a lot of the time, it's not how she looks like, but also what is she doing? So as you can see, she's on the beach and she's relaxing, but she's also jumping off a boat and she's spearfishing, and she's also an entrepreneur, and she's active. And so for me, this allows me to really kind of materialize who it is that I'm speaking to, because I need to understand my customer in and out. Like I said, they're the hero. They define everything that you're going to do in your brand. Super important. Now, once you've done that, so I kind of flipped it a little bit. Once you've done that, what you really need to understand is your vision, your mission, and your values. Okay. So your vision is, what is the future of your brand? Where do you want to go? And you should look into 5 to 10 years in advance, so that if your brand, if your fashion brand does evolve, you can grow into it. You don't want to rebrand your fashion brand in 1 year because you didn't think that in 5 years you would be at a certain point, or at 1 year point you would be somewhere else. So you really want to have like a long-term goal. Now, your mission defines your brand, its objectives, and its approach to reach those objectives. So your mission is now, what do you do now? And your vision is, where do you want to go? Now, it doesn't have to be too if you want to Google it, Google mission and values, and you'll have so many examples of like extremely big brands like Nike and Google that have their vision and mission already published online, and you can see how they're doing it. Now, then what you want to do is your values. So what does your brand stand for? And try not to just use one word. It's like, we stand for inclusivity. Well, what does that mean? What does inclusivity mean? Because it can mean very different things to you or me or that other person over there. So you need to understand what all of this means. And you need to put it all together. And second, I'm going to just put the end here, but I just wanted to also say you need to put everything together in a brand manifesto or a company manifesto. And this is really important. I'm going to say this to everyone out there. When you're doing your customer persona, you're doing your mission, your values, you write out your story. Who are we? What do we stand for? Who am I as a founder? What is my story? When you do things like your vision board, all of that kind of stuff, use something like Canva. You can even pay for the pro version. It's fabulous. That's where my brand manifesto lives. And create something And what you're going to do is every time you hire someone, every time you hire an employee, every time you hire a photographer, a social media manager, you send that brand manifesto to them so that they can understand where you're coming from, because you want brand consistency. A lot of the times what ends up happening is that you know what your brand stands for, but you're not able to communicate it effectively to the people that you hire. And what ends up happening is this disjointed messaging that comes out in your marketing, and then people get very confused very quickly. And my last point on this is that you also should be very, very wary that branding is an external thing, but it's also an internal thing. Your employees, you need to treat them also like your customers. They need to understand your brand. They need to encompass your brand, the values. They need to stand for it, because if they don't believe in your brand, then you're going to have a problem, because they are the first line of defense between you and your brand and your customers. So that's incredibly important. Now, if you want to learn more about branding, I know I didn't talk a lot about Now and Rio Swim or my problems, but I think that a lot of my problems were through all of this and I think the number one thing that I'm going to say is that branding is really hard. It's very, very important. It's one of the number one important things. It's very hard. And if you're a solopreneur or if you're by yourself doing this, it is incredibly hard to do this by yourself. And a lot of the times you're going to doubt yourself. I doubt myself almost every single day, and where I'm going and what I'm doing. And so my recommendation is always to reach out to masterminds or to other individuals and really try to figure out who can help you through the process. And to also work on your mindset. Mindset is one of the most important things. It will, like, if you create a brand strategy, but your mindset isn't there, if you're too scared, if you doubt yourself, if you don't think you're going to be successful, then you can have the most beautiful brand strategy in the world, but it's not going to work because you're not going to believe in it. So it's an ongoing process. You need to really look into it, really get your mindset right, surround yourself with the right people, because it is a hard process, but it is very rewarding in the end. And if you want to learn more about branding, I have a podcast. It's called The Branding Lab. I also share my personal experiences in that podcast, and it's a great little listen. It's a great little listen.
Yvonne, thank you so much. That was amazing. And I really, truly love your swimwear brand. Before Karl's part, can you tell me what is the biggest challenge, gap, problem today for you, for example, with your swimwear brand?
So, I mean, the first gap is COVID. I mean, that's a problem because everything is taking a lot more. And I think it's very hard to be able to launch something during a time like this. But I think one of the biggest problems for me was this timeline. Like, everything that I thought was going to happen and all the structures and all the deadlines that I set, they've been far surpassed. We are very late. I'm pushing back deadlines. I'm pushing back launch dates. And it's, again, this mindset thing of just saying, like, it's okay. That's how it works, and just working through that. And it was also just teaching myself as well. I don't come from fashion. Learning about fashion was really a very difficult process. I'm still learning, so it's an ongoing process.
Great, Karl, the stage is yours. What do you think about our fashion stories? How can Agile?
There's two aspects there. One is there's brand, which I think I can talk about in terms of Agile, in terms of how Agile can create an attribution model for people seeking to acquire a brand, because Agile is a way of working and a way of delivering and a way of thinking, so it feeds into the mindset piece. But I think I'll leave that until after. I'm going to talk briefly about COVID, and it's created a whole new level of excuses from businesses. I'm not saying you're excusing, I'm saying that you're probably dealing with people saying that they can't do things. When COVID started, I was working on a government project, and it was the only Agile project that they were doing, and every other project stopped or slowed down, and our project didn't. And we delivered on time during COVID. And the reason was we were set up to be adaptable. And that's essential. So although when you're working at endpoints with a delivery and you have marketing, waiting, and all these sort of things, I understand that. The intent with Agile is not to deliver big bang deliveries. You don't deliver here's the end line and here's all of the things in boxes. You deliver in an iterative fashion, so you know how you're doing. So if you're dealing with a third-party maker in China, for instance, you would expect them to be able to show you videos of them having made certain parts of your garments, rather than having the boxes of them delivered. It's what it is it creates that relationship to the work between those that request it and those that do it. And I think that when you have that kind of oversight engagement, then you don't get excuses, because they know that you're watching and that you're expecting to have a constant flow of communication. So I think that's probably what you should be looking for. You should be trying to change your model into a more agile one with your suppliers. I don't know if you're making things yourselves or if you're getting them built by others.
So I wanted to actually add to that. I have a very American mentality because I'm from Canada, so North American. But I found that because I work with Portuguese suppliers, and I work from my supplier is literally 5 minutes away, and even being 5 minutes away, everything I like send emails. Sometimes I actually have to go and show up at his door. Or that because he's not answering my emails or my calls, and so I have to stand there and like knock and be like, "Hi, do you remember me?" So yeah, it's tough.
I think the thing is to change things from we've got a disaster, let's solve it, to having a regular cadence for meetings and align those. I think with lots of people, certainly in these times, align those cadences with payments. So if you're seeing the work being done, you have a confidence to do your part payments. But if you're not seeing the work being done, you have no confidence. So I think that's probably something I would add in there for this current time. Usually you wouldn't need to have that additional piece on the communications cadence, but that, as I say, that with the government project, the reason it got delivered wasn't because was because we had that common cadence. And when we all got thrown out the buildings, because all the buildings shut down, we just carried on because you don't need a building to build many things in software and things like that. But for clothing, you do, because of machinery. So there may be a reduction in timelines, but there shouldn't be an end to timelines. And that's part of negotiating the planning. Again, it's a lot of the problems we have in business is that you have your plans and they have their plans, and the two plans don't join together except as a contract. Now in Agile, a vendor becomes part of your ecosystem. So they need to absorb how you want to work if they want to be your vendor. I can't hear you. So
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I actually am going to be switching my vendor.
but I think this is, if you can set that cadence around how you want to work, a lot of people hide problems instead of just exposing them. So a common one in fashion design is that you have this great idea, it's worked in all the maquettes that you've made, you take it into production and it doesn't work in a production line. So you need to make minor changes, or the stitch format you want to use doesn't work with the fabric you plan to use. It worked in the test samples, but it didn't work in the production samples. And those sort of things, instead of saying, here's my end point after 3 months where I expect my delivery of 6,000 items, you say, well, here's 1 week in, show me what you've done. And they tell you what they've done.
Yeah, the problem with me is that again, this is also actually one of the biggest things that I had, is that my manufacturer, they don't seem like they care very much. They feel like they have enough clients. I've already showed them my displeasure. We talked about it. Their response was, well, we have a lot of clients. It's COVID. We can't help you. Like, this is what we got. And I mean, I don't like the way that they're working, and And I mean, I guess this is also a big lesson learned, is that sometimes you don't work out with your manufacturers, and that's fine as well. And then you just work with, and you look for other people. And I know now how to, because we didn't start off in the right spot. I had to chase him down to accept to like work with me. So that was
okay.
bad precedent.
I think you're in a good position though. You have work that needs to be done, and there's lots of people who want to do work.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good position. I'm just going to jump back to the brand equity piece that you described. There's actually a real high value equity piece in Agile around communities and building working practices that establish a way of working that is transparent and actually ensures that everyone is valued. And that actually has a high value in the supply chain. So later on, when you are bought up by other companies and outlets, and they say, well, how did you make this? Do you know who made this? Well, this is how we relate to our vendors. This is how we work. I can, in an agile environment, I can show you a model where you can see how 400,000 people are working at the same time. We know what direction we're going in. We know what everyone's working on. You know, it's that kind of transparency. Now, if you're probably working with a manufacturing company that's got maybe 60 to 200 people, but if they are working on your piece, how many other pieces of work are they working on? What's the prioritization model?
Yeah.
So but the point is that as a brand yourself, there is equity in Agile because it says that you are not a boss, but you're part of the team, and the team is wider than you and just your company.
Yeah.
So it sounds a bit bland, but it's very hard to come in without the full details of what you're doing.
No, yeah, that's interesting.
Karl, thank you so much. You mentioned the team as a concept, and working with creative people in creative industry, I think is quite challenging. Well, what kind of ways of working we can implement to, make creative people be even more creative? Maybe something from the retrospectives, daily stand-ups, I don't know, something which could work specifically for us?
So I think those things help us in retrospect, but in the work, what we need is connectivity. And we need to have a sense of other people's value. So just to let people know on this call, I'm actually from an art college background. I do have a master's in computer science, but actually my original degree was in design. And I went to Ravensbourne College of Art and Design for my foundation. So I do have an art and design background. So I understand the diva bit. I'm not one, but I understand. I could be, but I'm not. It's a choice. But I do recognize that in that mindset, everyone is against you and no one's listening, and they don't understand you or value you. And if you get into that mindset, then what you really need is a support network that says, no, we don't understand you and we never will understand you, but what we do want to do is understand what you do. Explain to us why it's important, explain to us what you need from us. And actually it's part of the Agile experience of working in a team, even an extended team, which might even include the customer, is actually welfare and support, to understand what people do so that you can actually draw the best work from them and also give them the best inputs. Certainly as a designer, the most common problem I've seen is being given 10% of the details you need to do the design work and then expected to deliver 100% of the product. So hopefully that helps.
Something to that, if possible. I think that also with the brand manifesto that I was saying, or like understanding, putting everything together and sending it to people, I feel that for us as individuals, like as an employee, as someone who's worked for a lot of companies as well, I believe that we just need to feel more valued, feel like there's this kind of shift that's going on in terms of how we're working. And it's this idea that you have to shift from, oh, well, 5 other people are waiting for your job, to, no, we actually do value the work that you do. You have a say and input into this, though you like you included in here, help us grow. Then if you do succeed, also maybe financially or anything like that, you also give like those kind of things, incentives or extra thing to your team to make them seem like they feel valued. I think feeling valued and feeling appreciated is really the best way that you're going to get people to create better and be more included into your team. And also, I think that, yeah, I mean, for me, for them to also believe in what you do, because I feel like if they don't believe in what you do or in your values or your mission or your values, I don't see them really being that invested in working at your company. Or
exactly. Well, you mentioned Kanban earlier, and Kanban is I mentioned that in the talk I'm going to give a bit later, is a critical piece for exposing what's going on. We've come from a culture that's built up from the 1880s Industrial Revolution, where people going into the mills and the working places had no skills, had no professional understanding of how to behave, and they needed overseers. To the sort of 30s, 40s, and 50s, where people became highly skilled, but still had managements. And what Agile is doing is it's forcing along the discussion: do we need management anymore, or do we just need to know how what the work we do relates to the outcomes? And I think that's where we're going. So.
Great. Yes, thank you, guys. We have, as always, there's some technology on the way to success. So we have a wrong link in our meetup. So there are some people knocking to our meeting and they cannot get in. So I'm trying to solve that. So hopefully we will have a recording for the things they have missed. I want to introduce another amazing speaker. Teresa, I made you a co-host, so I know you wanted to share some visual information with us. While you're connecting, I will tell who Teresa is. A jewel, a fashion jewel, a great contributor to sustainable fashion, doing amazing projects. So Teresa is expert in communication design and also in event production, and also a marketing expert with experience working in corporate, cultural, and also non-profit organizations. And I know Teresa has a big experience working with NGOs, which can be very controversial for driving sustainable businesses. The founder of Trocate, if I'm not wrong, my Portuguese is not perfect yet. Teresa is having a project dedicated to second-hand clothing, which cannot be more sustainable. And she's also a social entrepreneur and now launching a new sustainable bridal project in bridal industry. So for this one and only day, the most important one, which can get even more sustainable now with Teresa. So Teresa, the stage is yours.
Hello. I'm going to share my, just a moment. Hoping this will work. I have been having some trouble with the internet. I hope it won't be breaking up.
Oh, sorry, I'm not.
Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. I was thinking already. Oh no, this is already happening. Okay, so.
Yeah, we can see it. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you for having me, first of all. I am going to go a bit deeper into the project, a bit more hands-on. It's going to be half-half what I did before and what I'm going to, like the new project that I'm developing now. I also didn't launch, so I'm there with Yvonne. So the visual you're going to see is just not random, but it's not the project visuals, anything. So my new project is called Our Common Good Bridal, Brides with a Purpose. And my background is, sorry, it's not changing the slide. Okay, it's a bit slow. Sorry. Yes, my background is graphic design and event management. I did wander off into event management because I thought it's more interesting, like to be connected to a bunch of people without being in an office all the time. That's how I pictured it, and so that's how I selected this new path. Later on, due to my work in NGOs, I did a lot of experiences where at some point you understand this whole NGO world. It's you have the big ones and then you have the small ones. And when you're working for the small ones, you see that this nonprofit world has some problems, especially with funding. Of course, the big ones also struggle with that, but it's where I started thinking, okay, I don't really like the nonprofit system 100%, but I also don't like the big companies. What's coming? So that's how I found social entrepreneurship, like what's in the middle. And I really think social entrepreneurship is the future. And so I started this project, which was still in the bit of the old system of thinking, which was the nonprofit. And that's one of the things that I will say later on that didn't work, obviously. But yes, so I started this swapping clothes project in 2011. So it's been 9 years doing many, many events. I started with 20 people, and then in 2020, which was my last event in February, we had like 200 people swapping at the same time. So of course there's a system to it. I will talk just really quick so to people understand, and I have like 1 or 2 pictures. So how did it work? There was actually a system behind it, a check-in and a checkout system, like it would be in a plane ride, so to say. There was no fee, so there's the problem already with the funding. I was doing it on my free time just because I enjoyed connecting people, and I really thought, okay, so what do we have at home that it's just too much? It's clothes. All right, so basically this was my idea. Like, it was very basic at the time. No one was talking about social entrepreneurship. Circular economy wasn't on the table. It was just sustainable because you're reusing. It was just this basic, one of the R's of many of ours. Yeah, so that's how it started. So then you check in a maximum of 10 pieces. There's a mistake there. Clothes are checked at the entrance, and then people get a ticket, and people would just be free to choose from whatever was in the space. It was very democratic. Nothing was, it wasn't a business type of thing. I didn't have my stall. And the checkouts, yeah. Oh, sorry. There is a mistake here, sorry, but okay, the checkout would be the same thing. You would check the clothes, and people would just get on there with their lives. It was a very simple mistake, simple process, sorry. This is one of the stalls at the check-in and checkout. We would have everything done by hands. We did have, we would check in all the clothes after. I did some measurements, I would check all the numbers at the end of the event. It was all manual, which is a lot of work. This is one of the events in 2019, still, this Christmas time. Yes, so I'm going to go right into this is more of an inspirational quote. Maybe I should have it at the beginning, because it was the essence. It was the reuse of the clothes that would basically design out waste and pollution and capture more value. This is like, each time you use more the things, then you are just basically not using new raw materials and making the work behind it last. So is it that easy going circular? What I learned from my previous project, So in 2011, of course, it was kind of new, but Portugal was going through this crisis. So crisis means people will turn into these more sustainable ways. That's what I've seen. Like, of course, maybe it's not tested, it's not a testing thing, but it's what I've seen. People will turn to new solutions and will look for it. Also, because normally secondhand means lower prices. Is it a niche? Of course, it's still a niche, I think, but these people are eager for transformation. So these new generations also are eager to do other types of consumption, basically. And it's a concept that never wears out, because there's still a lot of trash to be reused. Trash, because I mean, I put it there in brackets because basically it's obviously you can look at it trash or not. And this is something that I want to pay more attention to this, because people actually pay more attention to new things. What I mean here is, I was just providing a platform for reusing, but I wasn't really creating something out of those clothes. And I think that's something that I should have done, because people like to see the artistic side of things. And I think just providing the platform for reusing, I think it wasn't enough. Then also the profitable side of things, of course, I said, please save yourself first. You want to save the planet, but make it profitable in a way. And I did write the bottom line, people, planet, profit. And of course, tests. And that was something at the beginning for me was difficult, because I was working alone. So every time I had to set up an event, it was a lot of work. So you have to try and figure out how to do it without spending so much either money or just, you know, time and effort. You have to streamline this process. So this is the actual slide, like the main points. So the concept did work, like people really enjoyed it, but of course it was still lacking the new, like I should have produced something like upcycled items, for example. It's something that it's coming up. The storytelling behind the brand was working, and also being transparent, and the democratic concept around it, because everything that people gave equaled one. Let's say the ticket, I brought 10 things, I had 10 things to swap. So it was very democratic, and people liked that, because there was no, you know, if I have these jeans from Tommy Hilfiger, maybe I will get 10 points. There was no point system. I think people enjoy this democratic process because it meant it was open for everyone. Yeah. What didn't work? Not having a financial plan. I mean, yeah, the last years I went more into social entrepreneurship and management, and I applied to several business accelerators, and that's where I started to really learn, although still informally. I do not plan to go into a business degree or anything. Yeah. Then I didn't really write down processes, which I think it's a big mistake, because there was also not room to grow, because if you want to grow, you need to know how you're doing things. So I really focused everything on myself. And when I started having volunteers, like around like 15 volunteers in the last events, that's when I realized I was doing everything orally and without writing it down. Yeah, and no creation of new things. Yeah, so changing. So why did I? Well, COVID hit, and I did not want to continue this because it was very events based, and I really didn't know how to pivot. to be honest. I was very unmotivated, it's the reality. And I started looking like, okay, the events industry is going to start to change completely. And also I started looking into the events industry because I have a lot of friends in the weddings industry too. And yes, there was a lot of things happening. Yeah. So what I started to look, okay, I still want to continue in the secondhand area. So for me, what was important is, okay, what is still being used only once in fashion? Obviously the wedding dress. And I started thinking, okay, is this a trend? And okay, there is a lot of things in USA, in Germany, in UK. This is already a market, but in Portugal at the moment, it's still, there's still a gap. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. I want to go deeper into this. And of course, it's trendy right now, but also it's a necessity. So I started doing some research to back up my will, so to say. I also did a form that I put online, and I got like 300 responses to just understand if the Portuguese women or ex-brides or future brides were interested in that. And I did get some good feedback. Around 47% said they would buy a secondhand dress. So now I'm looking for the ones who want to sell also. There was also not so many, but let's see how it works. And this will also shape the project. Okay. So I thought how to create impact in a social, environmental, economical way. It's not changing here on this side. Yes, okay, so sorry. It's really slow. Okay. And for me, circular economy can serve all of these things. And so I created our common good bridal. So this is a consignment shop, very basic. So people will be able to sell their dresses through the shop, and I in turn will sell it for them and make a commission. Obviously this is like the basic part of the idea. I would like to evolve this, but this is basically the main idea. So everything is connected, and for me, we were talking about this too, the partnerships and teams. I am, from my previous project, I think I started to think about this ecosystem type of partnerships where I really am trying to involve them in the process of creating, even if they are not part of the project. So for me, the partnerships are now a lot more part of the end product. For example, I want to start the shop without so many costs, and I already secured a partnership with seamstress atelier where I will be able to start the project without having that many costs, and they can have feedback too. So this is an idea to lower the costs and risks. The differentiator is that I'm working with individuals, with companies too. So shops with dead stock could be also potential people selling the dresses to me. Of course, the planet is an entity here that is also like receiving something good from this. And also I thought the social causes that I want to address. This is because after being 9 years communicating the project in this sustainable field, I feel like sometimes sustainability is like this far away thing that I cannot do much. Yes, I'm saving the planet. Yes, and so I think social cause is something you can see the effects. So I think sustainability is also a social cause, but I wanted to be more direct and maybe work locally, and so people can see these effects of So the idea is to contribute with some part of the sales towards these causes. Not exactly entirely sure how still, but yeah, I'm working on that. So this is what I see for the would be the second or third phase. So it would be selling physically in a shop, online, but also do a lot of communication stunts like pop-up stores or trunk shows, typical of the bridal industry. And also the stock I want to create. I thought about upcycling new dresses, old dresses, sorry, into new dresses. And this is also, yeah, this is from a learning from my last project. And the last phase would be a peer-to-peer platform, like where people are selling dresses without my intervention anymore. So that would be a third phase, but that's just very much in the future. Thank you. I hope this was an insight into, you know, putting into second hand.
You have it all there. You have slides, you have strategies, you have faces. That's awesome. Karl, what we can say here?
Okay, so there's not a huge amount I can add from an agile perspective, but I can add something from an e-commerce perspective. So I'll say what I can from an agile perspective. I think that you need to take what you've done and, like the first speaker said, maybe to put it onto a Kanban. To add flexibility into your thinking so you don't forget things, but also you keep them open to change. I think that your ecosystem is actually as complex as someone that is using manufacturers, because actually every person you deal with is effectively a separate organization, a separate entity. And so you need to start to think about how you will build your policies and behaviors around a constantly changing set of interactions. So I think there's something there where you can actually start building a model of who your target audience is using agile methods in Kanban, and actually then start to create attribution models of who is likely to respond. I think the e-commerce piece is actually your model lends itself to a subscription. What you're trying to do is it does lend itself to a very small subscription, but a regular subscription. Because
in my case, there wouldn't be a subscription because people want supposedly just one dress. So it
well, you know, 8 to 10 years apart.
So the idea is people sell the dress to me, or in consignment, which means I sell it for them, and then I basically run a platform where people can buy it either online, but I do think the Portuguese public is not ready yet to just buy their dress, especially secondhand wedding dress online. I've been doing the research and I don't think the public is ready for that. So I do know that I will have to have a physical shop in the end.
So it's interesting it works for eBay. People will buy secondhand wedding dresses on eBay. Not telling you how I know that. No, it's just a behavior. The question is, if you can get the data from eBay about how many people in your country actually will access and use that system. So, but in terms of agile, you know, you have too many endpoints and too many sets of behavior to actually simply say you can create an agile model around this. You can create a way of your working that is more supportive to you, because at the moment you probably run ragged. So you need to actually create this is how we onboard or buy the products. This is how we store them. This is how we make them accessible. This is how we sell them. Type engagements. But by the sounds of it, it's just you at the moment. So it's having a management meeting with yourself is hard work. But I think that if you set down how you want to operate once you start expanding, but I think first off you need to say, how does each part of what you do work? What is the current situation and what do I want it to be? Because if you don't have a target, no matter what framework you bring into how you organize yourself and potentially your business as you go, if you don't have a target of what good looks like, you'll never achieve it, because you'll always just respond to the current situations.
Yes, yeah. No, that makes sense. I am writing down all the processes. I am learning from my past mistakes in the other project and try to make this more business oriented. It's the reality. The other one was just more, I don't know, trying to do good, like trying to save the planet. Yeah, I think I was also very young when I started it, and now it's different.
So what I'd suggest you do is do something like an affinity diagram. So the way you do that is you get some post-it notes and you write down your experiences. What were the good experiences? What were the bad experiences? What did people tell you about how they experienced it? And then from there you can start to model out what does good look like. I think it's good. Remember, there's every person's view of the world is true, but it's only true for them. So you need to work out what the relative truth is relative to your business and what you're trying to achieve, that you can agree to do something that other people want rather than just what you want, and they can agree to do some of the things that you want rather than just what they want. And that's what business is actually creating that translation layer between desires. This is more of a business consultancy rather than anything to do with Agile, but it's I think you need that. You also need that separation, because I've set up loads of companies over the years. You need that separation of, this is my business piece, this is my home life, and you have a separation, because if you don't do that, then you'll never leave work.
No. It makes sense. It does make sense a lot.
In our chat, we have a couple of people doing constantly the management meetings with themselves. So I'm the one of them.
But there's nothing wrong with doing that. But it's kind of a role play. Exactly. I mean, it's a really good one to try and do. What would you do if the bank manager was in the room with you?
Oh.
What would you say to them about what you're doing, and would they go for it? So that's a good business meeting. The other one would be, what if you were trying to pitch it to your mum? Would she understand what on earth you were doing and why? I mean, I constantly do that with my mother, and she goes, "Get a proper job, Karl." But she doesn't use computers or social media or any of those things. She doesn't have any concept of those things. What she just sees is whether or not you get up in the morning, go out, and you work all day and you come home again. That's work to her. But if I can't explain to her what I do for a living, I'm probably not going to be able to explain it to anyone else. So
I also think
Yvonne, you can add on top of that before we go into Karl's part. So yeah, stage is yours.
I think in terms of management, I heard this quote that says, like, you can't see the label if you're inside the bottle. So that's the problem with like having management meetings with yourself. Sometimes you think your ideas are ingenious, and then if you start talking to other people, maybe they're not as strong as you thought they were.
Yeah, it's that filtration. We see the world through rose-tinted glasses as far as what we're doing, and no one else knows what we're talking about. But you're right, it's you can't see from inside the bottle. But also at the same time, if there's only you, and during a pandemic there's usually only you, or your partner who's probably heard up to here with your ideas. How do you get that response? And I find family and friends are very good because they just point out the most obvious things that I've completely missed. I mean, I think it's useful for me to have frameworks like Agile to be able to go, well, how does that work? If I were to take this and apply this to a group of 50 people, would it still work? Can I future-proof what I'm doing to scale? And it may not be my plan to scale, but if I can't, then maybe what I'm doing doesn't really make much sense. So.
Great. Do you want me to take us to the slides?
Yes, I've created a short presentation of some agile hacks for the fashion industry. Totally open to conversations about this. Again, it's very hard to know before the point exactly what kinds of fashion industry we're talking about, but just got 5 points really about visualizing complexity, creating transparency and unity, solving problems as a community, and that really relates to the size of your business, changing direction and experimental working. So if you want to go to the next slide, I just lifted this straight off Wikipedia. And this is a Kanban board. Now, for me, this is kind of like really boring looking and very much a software development version of a Kanban. If you want to go to the next slide down, I've actually converted it into what I would expect for the fashion industry. And what that is on the left, this goes through the design process from concepting a fashion product into making it ready for building it and through into market and feedback. Now, the reason for using something like Kanban, and you can use it for strategy, certainly you can use it for almost anything. And I know that one of my friends who's on this call, apparently she Kanbans her husband in order to ensure that she knows what's happening at any moment with him, which I think is brilliantly funny. And I would love to see her results. It allows you to visualize all of the pieces, no matter where they are in your processes. So this starts with a pool of concepts, and as designers and creative people, we all have loads of concepts. I've got books and books of them that will never see the light of day, but they were great ideas when I came up with them. And then there's the next stage, which is business case, and building a business case around the concepts actually very quickly allows you to discard some, or just say that the world is not ready for them. So that's a very good set of processes. And then after you've done that and you've added the understanding of the costs of making something, then you also state that it's ready. And then you do an actual design. So again, in the fashion industry, there's different kinds of design. There's the high level concept, we want this range of clothing. We have this concept, these colors, these fabrics, certain kinds of structuring, and that's a very high level piece, and that allows you to understand what the making requirements may be and what the sub-assemblies are. So like building a car in fashion, you don't actually think of a single garment as a single piece of build. You actually have sub-assemblies. So in a shirt, you will have the collar, you will have the cuffs, you will have the sleeves, you will have the body, and you may have pockets, or you may have buttons, or however it's going to be tied. It may have a zip, for all I know, or Velcro if you're particularly in need of not doing things up yourselves. So they in the production area, those sub-assemblies are then detailed. And then this is where pattern making happens, where you actually will do a proof of concept. So lots of the fashion industry will do proof of concepts and then do a fashion show. And they'll use the proof of concepts to engage with buyers, for the buyers to say, yes, we want 200,000 of those, or yes, we want 1 million of those in 15 different sizes. So that's how it tends to work in fashion design and fashion development, as it were. And then it goes in, I didn't fill it all the way out. It goes into assembly preparation. That means that you have all of the right garments, cloth available. You have all the right findings or the fastenings. You have the right machinery in place. You have the right skilled people all the way through. So it's a form of planning, and then you're ready. And each of these pieces moves across this Kanban, and then you go into the build process. And that build process may mean that some of these elements move outside of your organization to multiple vendors. They come back as ready, or they come back as completed garments. And then they should go through a quality control aspect and a statement of ready. And then they go route to market, whatever your route is, whether, and a lot of people at this time are obviously using e-commerce, but actually one of the most important things in agile ways of working is to have that feedback loop. It's not enough to build things, it's not enough to deliver something. Until it starts giving value to the intended users, you're not really going to know you've done the right job. And then at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it because I can't see it on mine here, but there's an all the way through something called measurement. Sorry, something called, you all know what measurement is. But for Agile, measurement is about measuring quality. So a lot of people will say Agile is about speed. Well, actually, Agile is about quality. It's the primary focus of Agile is to ensure quality, to ensure that everyone knows what they're doing and how it relates to each other, and that they deliver quality. The second one I've got there is value for money. There is absolutely no point in building a product or service that no one could afford, and that by building it, you lose money. So there have been some historical elements where I think it's the Blue Mondays original cover for their album, for their single, cost more than they could sell it for, so they lost money for each one they made, yet they still did it as an art project. And then there's speed, and there's also something called cost of delay. So if you are certainly in fashion, speed is really important, but cost of delay is more important. You may have a priority set of lines going through production and into your market, but if you come up with an idea that you can put off to next year, but actually means you might lose the market or lose the position in the market, then cost of delay might be huge. Again, I can go into these a bit more later if you'd like. Yulia, do you want to go on to the next slide? So, creating transparency and unity. So this is another team thing that aids agile ways of working. There's a nice statement here from the Dalai Lama saying, a lack of transparency results in distrust and deep sense of insecurity. This is where most workplaces are now. And the adoption of Agile over a period of time, I'm not saying the immediate adoption of Agile deals with these, but over a period of time, it removes distrust and removes insecurity, because people know what they do is valued, and they know that people aren't trying to get rid of them, but rather they're trying to work out how best to work with them. If you want to click on to the next statement. Individually, we are one drop, together we are an ocean. Satoru. I think this is so important. Yes, we are all unique. Yes, we're all valuable. But actually, it's together that we have the greatest value. It would be nice if the humanity stopped calling itself a race and started calling itself a community. I'm not actually racing against anyone else. I'm actually trying to find out how we can get things done. Yulia, do you want to move on? So if we're creating transparency and unity, how do we do that? So value people's knowledge, their working practices and dependencies as a conversation. This is not an imposed activity by HR. It's a practical implementation of a new way to work. And that means you have to do it. It's that whole look, see, learn thing. You know, when you were in primary school, you would get given some information by the primary school teacher. So you'd look, and then you would give a bit more detail, and maybe they might do a demo, and then you would see, and then you would do a demo and you would learn. And that's the same with Agile. You can read about it to your heart's content, but it won't mean you understand any of it until you try to apply it. And then, so how do we do that? So celebrating success and understanding not success. Our world is very much against the word failure. I'm not sure why. It's I don't know where it comes from, but you know, in design, you have success and you have abject failure, and we don't mind that too much because we know that we can do better next time. But in business, people don't like the notion of failure. So I've said not success. And celebrating and understanding comes from, in this scenario, applying a retro. So you can have a meeting that expresses what was good. And if you are the only business person, but you're part of a supply chain, you're celebrating success with your customers, with your vendors, and you let them know that they're part of a wider context. What was good? Certainly those meetings with vendors are usually about what was not so good, but what was good is important to add in as well, because people need to know that their successes are valued, and it's not just always a beating people down with their negatives. So what was not so good? What do we want to do less of? That's really looking into what we did in the last period of time, and what do we want to do more of? You know, in every organization, there's things that are done often that have evolved, and people don't even, you know, the reason and the rationale is lost in time, and they actually, for a lot of them, make no sense and deliver no value at all. But when you start to retro what you've just spent your last 2 weeks doing, if you find that you come across those behaviors and activities, but they did nothing of value, they didn't move the work any further forward, it may well just be some old governance that's been left over. It may be that your vendor is responding to a legal requirement that ceased to exist in the 1960s. Who knows? But a lot of these old regs exist and actually have not been replaced because no one is kept up to date with them. So I've got a thing here about skills dating, again, to discover as much as possible about upstream and downstream skills, activities, issues, and opportunities. Again, maybe in some of the fashion industry, you wouldn't describe it as dating, but certainly skills, engagements in games to find out what people really do. You know, if you're dealing, again, internally with staff, a lot of them do things, and at a high level, you'll know, but you won't really know to the level of detail, and you won't know their passion either. You know, from my experience, people involved in the fashion industry are highly passionate about what they do, but their passion may not be everything. And finding out people's individual passions really helps you understand how to communicate and get things done. Socializing. I certainly have worked on projects where they've never socialized before, and I come in and go, right, everyone down to the pub. Or in fact, in one of the places, they were against drinking completely, so fine. Okay, so I arranged for us all to get cream cakes from Maison Berthaud in London, the oldest patisserie in London, lovely cakes. And we had a session that everyone was required to go to, where we were engaged with talking about the work. Not talking about, you know, we're going up to people and say, why haven't you done this? But rather in just engaging with and joking about and having fun. And then hacking, which is the sort of the next one. If we go, it says PTO. So the next page is more about hacking. I've got music in the background. Yulia, oh, sorry, you know what it is. I'm looking at the screen. I've got two screens here. So solving problems as a community, honesty is essential. Honesty is essential in Agile. It doesn't automatically arrive. It's something that evolves. Certainly in companies I worked with before, technology has taken a beating over the years because they have tried to do as much as they possibly can, and then people ask for more. So one of the things that you can do to get people to understand how to cross-relate is actually to hack the project. And hacking the project is about really getting from everyone who's involved what needs to be done. And I've certainly had hacks with major teams, about 60 people, and there's about 4 or 5 different vendors that sent teams along to help us understand what they could do and also what they couldn't do. And we were able to hack the project into a way that allowed us to deliver it. They had planned 2 years. We did it in 3 months because we hacked the entire project. I worked with vendors a different area of business in publishing and outlets where there were shops. And we hacked what the service supplier was doing. And we looked at how they could better service the desires and intents of the outlets and the vendors. And I took that back and I was able to change the internal systems. Another way is design panels. Again, this tends to be internal unless you have vendors as your design people. But that's to really, when people get stuck, it's quite common for people to change things because it makes sense for them to change it, but actually there's a ripple effect, and the impact across an organization and the intent of your design and your delivery mechanism may mean that you don't deliver at all. So rather than someone just changing one piece, you just pull everyone together that has a part in it to ensure that you get the right solution. Remember, there are millions of potential solutions and not just one, but those solutions are each attributable to a bunch of external criteria that often you will not know exists. And then the last one is swarming or spiking a problem. Everyone stop everything. It's quite common in ways of working outside of Agile that people go, that's not my problem, that's yours. Within Agile, a problem is everyone's problem because it affects everyone's ability to deliver. And the simplest and best way to inspire and build communities is to support each other when there are problems. And I have done this again on large projects, 15, 16 people in the UK, 40 people in India, and 40 people in China, and said, right, everyone stop work. We have a problem here that we don't know how to solve. And you will always find that there's at least one person has an idea. Often it's a lot more than that. But by swarming, you can actually, within a few hours, solve the problem. Go to the next one.
Is it this one? Or the next one?
Sorry. Yes, it's back again. Sorry, I ran out of power on my earpod.
Mm-hmm.
I ran out of power on my earpod, so I'm back again. So I'm down to changing direction. And it's a very hard thing as a business person to have to change direction. Because it is admitting defeat to a certain level. The direction that you had chosen and it's on you didn't work. And you've gone into these like a hacking event and assumed that the hacking event will agree with you at the end, and they haven't. And this is a bit where humans need to grow up and stop holding on to the I'm right because I'm the boss, or I'm senior so I know what it should be. And so you need to change direction, so you just do it. Same with design panels and the same with swarming. It's hard to be an adult. If it wasn't hard, everyone would be doing it and we wouldn't have so many business failures. And many businesses stop because the owner had a great idea, but from our early conversation about creating a brand, didn't do any research to see that there's a market. They thought, it's like, I know someone that spent £1.5 million on an idea that already existed, but they had not done any research at all. They were so driven by their fabulous idea and they came to me and said, Karl, I need some help to make this work. I'm going, you do know that so-and-so did that 3 years ago? And he said, yes, I know, but they're in America. And I'm going, I don't think you understand. They own that entire market globally. They came up with it first. They patented it. They own it. And they're like, oh, I'm going to carry on. I've got to. No, that's not good.
Karl, did you disappear? Are you with us? Should I click the next slide while you're there? We need some magic to get Karl back to us. Yvonne, do you have anything to say while Karl is reconnecting to us? How does it look like for fashion people? That's very complicated, isn't it?
I think that a lot of times when everything seems a little bit complicated, I think it's just taking everything one step at a time and really just, first of all, acknowledging all of the steps that you need to take, not putting too much pressure on yourself in terms of like learning all of this and taking it one step at a time, because it can become overwhelming, but it can definitely be done. So.
Yeah, that was my first reaction, when I saw the charts from Agile, the schemes, the approaches, theory. I thought, no, this is not for me. This is for the genius engineers and IT people. But if you take it with a bite size, one little thing, one little step, you start thinking or doing differently, then it works. Karl, are you back to us? Because I'm not sure I couldn't do the rest of the slides. Well, I could read them just, and that's it.
Sorry about that. So it's the issue of using a phone. I don't know if you can see me or not.
Yeah, we see you perfectly. You look very good.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll tell my wife. If we could go on to the next slide, or my last slide, the last one. So the last thing we need to think about with Agile is to think about experimental working. I think the most important thing is there is no right way to do things. Just going back to your video at the beginning, there's no right form of fashion. There's lots of different views. But as in fashion, we work things through until we have something that we're happy with. So there's experimental working, moving from fixed thinking to experimental working. And it's something that's happened about 5 or 6 years ago. Someone said that in the future there won't be any work. What there will be is lots of experiments. So thinking about processes are nodes and all are needed every time. Do we need to do everything that we did before to get the same results? Can we think about it differently? Did we learn something that we can reuse? Or if we learned something that we couldn't use again, did we bank it so that we could use it later? And this goes back to having this backlog of both ideas and ways of working. And a lot of people say, oh, that's experience. Well, it is, but actually a lot of the time people don't write it down. And then they go and do the same thing again without realizing it. So keep doing experiments, rotate the people doing them for more perspectives and a better community inclusion. there isn't a department in Agile that does innovation. Everyone does innovation in Agile. Some people are more driven and drawn towards it. Some people are more driven to ordered processes, but essentially allow people to have the opportunity to grow and to learn and expect the unexpected in business. And I'm sure everyone now expects the unexpected, but I also remember a few years ago, there was a volcano that exploded and there was no flying for about 4 months. So if your dependency is based around things that can be affected, which is everything, then have contingency thinking in your working. As part of this festival, I've also been in the red team, which looks for the worst case scenarios of what could happen, and therefore we build models around how we might work. And the last statement is, no one has solved everything, and when they have, someone will find new challenges. So don't be overwhelmed by whatever you're going through in your business, but rather see it as an opportunity to solve that situation. Agile frameworks, it can create the environment for solutions, but so can other ones. I'm sorry, that sounds like a terrible sales deal on Agile, but it's important to use the right tool for the right job. And then the last slide is just some ways to contact me and things I'm involved with. Questions?
Wow, we can find you almost everywhere. Look at so many links, Karl.
I've got more than that, but I didn't put them all up. I just put some of them up because so the first set are social media, second set are businesses, but I've got more than that. The third set are blogs, and so I give away knowledge. I have written a book, one, and I've got a few more on the go. But for the most part, I give away what I've learned because it's the only way humanity evolves. Is if I can save you from my terrible errors and mistakes, then you can go further than me. And I know that's kind of counterculture in our world today, but I believe my job as someone of a certain age, for some people I'm ahead of you in years, is to break down the barriers so that you don't have to face them, and to give you the reasons I did what I did so that you can do more than me and better than me. I expect to be superseded by people who have longer left to live than I do. And that should be the way it is. The last set of links are business ones. So Crunchbase is an entrepreneur's site. If you're an entrepreneur, get yourself on there. It's used for companies involved in seed funding. And the last one, Thinkers one, is a social media system that values your social cred, your ability to influence.
Super. Do we have questions to Karl? We have a bit of time reserved for some discussion, questions. That was, Karl, quite heavy for my creative brain. I think we can share, if you're okay, presentation with the participants afterwards. We can upload it and send it out so you can, go through it. I think I have something in the chat here. So people are saying thank you, Karl. But any questions, Yvonne or Teresa? Anything in regards to what Karl said, or some specific hot question on your table today?
And just to say, I've tried to keep the jargon down to a minimum. I've not pulled out all of the Agile speak.
That was not all of it. Oh my goodness! How can you keep?
No, I removed most of the Agile speak because it's like learning a new language, and actually it makes knowledge inaccessible.
So Yvonne, what was one
really
thing? Teresa, yeah, you.
No, I really like the last bit where you were saying that the only way that humanity evolves is by sharing the mistakes. And I am actually thinking about everything I learned from the swapping project to actually, like, if I don't believe I'm gonna do the events anymore in the future, so I thought how to end things on a good note. And I think by sharing what I learned, I don't know exactly how, maybe through social media that I used to manage, and all the maybe some sort of session, so that maybe other people want to continue the swapping events and in their own way. And I also wrote I wrote the expect the unexpected and prepare for the contingency thinking, definitely something important. Because, for example, the other project was heavily based on events, and it's just poof. So basically this new project, I am definitely thinking about the whole, like, not losing focus, but having more than one product or service that could be, that doesn't have to necessarily rely on one outlet only, basically.
Yeah. If you can think in ecosystems, and going back to blogging, I started blogging in 2001 as a very cathartic thing, because I wanted to express what I'd done to that date, but I didn't really want to make money out of it. I had been offered a book deal already, and I said, well, I'd rather give away the knowledge. But to the last, currently I've got about 4.5 million readers a year for my blog. So it's interesting to me, because I'm not seeking readers. The whole social media influencer thing is something I only discovered like last year. Because I just give away knowledge anyway, and I think people respond to that. It's not I don't own an audience. They're people that are benefiting from what I've done, or very badly done in the past, to avoid doing it themselves.
Yvonne, word from you. Yvonne has made it a PhD, so for you everything should be super easy here. So what was maybe one finding, one idea which you will take with you?
I'm going to tell you, in truth, I didn't know about agile thinking before. So even in my PhD, I have to say, I found all of it interesting. I find that it connected a lot when what you were saying in terms of like the branding aspects. There were some elements in there that came up as well. Overall, I think I feel like if you're not familiar with agile thinking, I think a lot of people might feel, like we said, overwhelmed with it. And I don't think we should. I don't think you should feel overwhelmed with it. I don't really have any like extra comments on that, actually.
Yeah, we're getting tired, Karl. Friday evening, we need to get our creative mojitos now. Time.
Yeah. I think the thing about agile is be tentative to start with, and try it. I think that's the thing. Is don't. It's kind of like saying that from now on you're only going to wear blue. Surely what you really need to do is decide whether or not blue works for you or not first.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way.
I think what's really important, which was touched upon throughout this whole presentation, is this like importance of having your whole team come together and make decisions together, and having them invested into what you're doing. And I think that's very important, because a lot of the times what ends up happening is people, like you said, it's not my problem, or it's that problem, or it's this person's problem. And when you have that type of thinking, it can destroy a company. It can really erode any growth, because I've seen it already happen, when people don't really feel that invested in it. And I think that then connects to branding a little bit, because to identify your mission and your values and your vision, and having an understanding of that, and then sharing that with your team and having them come on board with that, and being able to also embody all of that and really believe in it, I think that's important as well. And it's also just shifting away from that mentality of like, you know, they're my employees, they're just my employees, you know, that's it. You know, they're part of our company. We want to nurture their growth. You know, there's different ways of doing it. It doesn't have to always be monetary, but sometimes it can just be like giving them more freedom, giving them more flexibility, different types of things so that they can get more on board. Understanding working now and understanding how to build teams in this new normal that we have, especially now that everything is going remote. And it's like, these are their companies now that never thought that they would go remote, that are remote. And just dealing with that and how to create a team and team environment. I think that's going to be very interesting.
I think the other thing is with, if you're involved with vendor relationships, there's a real opportunity here to change the financial basis of that vendor relationship. So I know you said it's not always money, but I think there's an opportunity here to say that you so believe in what you're doing that you'll give them a percentage against each thing that gets sold, and maybe it's 1%, as well as paying for them to build. And then, you know, they start to see their existence bound to you, rather than just being a, you know, the problem that Agile was trying to solve is the problem that industry still has, which is that you as a client give your work to the industry supplier to do, and they do it, and then they give it back to you. But actually, that throwing things over the fence doesn't actually give you confidence that it's being done, or being done to the quality that you need it to be done. And it doesn't give them confidence either that they're going to get paid, because they don't really know you. So what Agile does is it combines the two things together, and it says, you know, we aren't separate entities working on a project. We are one entity that gets paid differently. So you get paid by the end product, and they get paid by a service relationship. And I think that changing that, and I've seen it with major corporations saying, all right, we're all now moving to a 3-month cadence, where every 3 months, all of our vendors come in and we go through what we're doing for the next 3 months, and they tell us what they're doing, and we see where the alignments are, and also where the breaks are, you know, where the potential issues are. And what the impact it's had on those vendors is they've started to adopt more agile ways of working themselves, and they have seen huge savings because they were doing lots of work thinking that people would buy it. You know, there's, you know, like manufacturers, they buy tooling because there's a certain change in the market, and actually that change in market doesn't hit them as a business supplier, so they just wasted all that money on tooling. Whereas if they're more closely associated with companies like the one that you're trying to get going, then they would know what the next moves were, and they would actually be thinking about the right tooling. And when I say tooling, I don't mean like big machines. I'm talking about detail machines that actually deal with small components or small assemblies. So if you're dealing with certain kind of stitching or certain kinds of fabric, you need different kinds of setups within the systems they already have. And then maybe the tooling they've already got, the detail piece wouldn't work. And I think that way there should be that better connection.
When I was talking about teams, like I actually was thinking more of like when your own teams, not the vendors, but like when you grow your own team, when you have your own fashion designers or your graphic designers or social media people or your marketing people or your customer service. So I was talking more in that sense. And I think that it might not have worked as well in terms of when you're hiring out to vendors. But yeah, that was my context. I think it was a little
okay. I mean, that's the standard context, but what's happened in the last 3 or 4 years is that the ways of working for service suppliers are now being moved towards a more agile cadence. And the reason for that is that if the vendor is doing changes in how they're working according to their own plans without servicing the strategy of the clients, then you get a divergence.
Yeah.
So when you go to them for something slightly different, they go no. And you go, but we give you 90% of your business. And it's still no, because we're not interested. That's not where we're going. Well, you need to maintain that constant conversation to ensure that actually they understand where you're going and why, and you understand where they're going and why, and see where the touch points are.
I think that's very interesting. I might, yeah. Because I just started working with manufacturers, and I think just understanding it's also, cultural differences, and with manufacturers depending on where they live. And I think that's also a hurdle that a lot of people might have to go through. But it's definitely interesting in that sense.
Thank you so much, guys. So do you have questions?
And that's why
Somebody is sending
carry on, Yulia.
to LinkedIn, so let's connect in the LinkedIn. Alberto has shared with us an upcoming event, so we kindly invite everybody to more events, not only on fashion, within Agile 20 Reflect. We still have a lot of them. Karl, girls, Yvonne, Teresa, thank you so much for your contribution. I definitely have trained my neuroplasticity with you guys, because I'm not, good enough in both fashion and Agile. So that was a crazy mixture for me. Thank you so much. I will go through the slides once I have a good sleep, Karl, because there were many words I don't know. So thank you for building our neurons and getting better, smarter, having another view on things. I hope you get inspired, also a bit tired, I guess. So thank you so very much for this session. We can round up. Yeah, if no questions, and let's have a good drink today for sustainable fashion and for agilization of everything, including creative industries. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you, Lydia.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Karl.
Thank you,
Thank
Karl,
you.
for your feedback.
Thank you. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks,
No,
everyone.
please, guys.